Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen meeting for June 4th, 2019 to order. First order of business is approval of the minutes of
June 4th.
May.
I'm sorry.
May, that's tonight. May 21st. You trying to get out of here?
I think we've got them all handled already.
Approval of the minutes of May 21st, 2019.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of May 21st, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of May 23, 2019.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we did that. Public comment on items not on the agenda. Okay. We're going to defer on, what? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Come right up. How are you tonight, Mr. Demko?
Edmund Demko, 18 Bradley Black Drive. I'd like to submit a petition, citizen petition to the Selectmen regarding the alleged improprieties as submitted by MPC 10. What the petition states is they would like the Selectmen to withdraw their hiring an outside private firm and put it into the Attorney General's office or the Inspector General's office. So I have these over 200 signatures here requesting that it be done.
Happy to receive your petition, thank you.
I'll take it over here.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. All set?
Yeah.
All right,
Thank
thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Hersey? I'm going to say before we start, if we're going to continue on this path, this is a personnel matter, and so we've got to be very careful with the parameters of the discussion tonight, so I may have to prescribe that. Go ahead, Mr. Hersey.
I've been in town 70 years. I understand.
Thank you.
I've gone through this before.
Okay.
I'm very well versed.
I'm just making sure everybody understands.
Well, you didn't say it to him.
Because, okay, let's go, Mr. Hersey. Name and address.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why.
Name and address.
I'm just wondering.
Name and address, sir.
Yeah, my name is John Hersey, 65
Thank
Hersey
you.
Street. I'm just wondering why you people haven't said more about this issue, about these two people. And also, why wasn't something done before this one particular individual took all of his paperwork out of his office and you know, to see what he actually took out? Did he take town papers out? Did he take his own business papers out? How much rent was he paying for running his?
Okay, I am gonna stop you.
Yeah, well,
As I've said,
why is that a problem? Why is that a problem?
because personnel matters are confidential.
Personnel matters. Yeah, you people work for the citizens. This guy worked for the citizens. I'm a citizen. I have a right to know.
I completely understand that, and there's a prescribed process that the town is undertaking, as you well know. So I'd like you to have a seat now, sir.
Yeah, I think I'm doing a pretty good job, don't you think? I mean, that's 3 people that I worked on for 1 year, and they're gone.
Thank you, Mr. Hersey.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Jim Clark, 79 Tower Road. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I haven't heard from you lately, and I'm here to reiterate that discussion we were involved in regards to the drainage. And I don't know, how's your investigation going on that?
I think that we've consulted with Susan Murphy on that, and I'm happy to get back to you on that offline. But we've actually spent a considerable amount of time.
I've asked for a letter from an attorney, and I don't have it yet.
I'm happy to follow up with you.
For years, but
I'm happy to follow up with you offline.
thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Amy Matos. I live at 119
I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
South Street.
Could you speak into the mic? I didn't hear you.
Sorry. Amy Matos, 119
okay.
South Street. I live on the corner of South and Forget Me Not. So this has to do with the paving. I'm asking about the paving or the water pipes, new water pipes that were going to be put in by June 1st. with the Aquarian.
Yep.
And I know everything's changed. We voted for the town to buy it, but the pipes have been sitting in the middle of the island of our little lane there. I live on the corner, for like 2 months. So wondering what the status is with that. We want to pave the road eventually, and we can't do anything until the pipes get replaced.
Sure. Do you want to handle that one, Tom?
Sure. So some of these projects that were planned are still in unfortunate a bit of limbo while we determine authorizations for expenses and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, but the D.P.U., is this having to do with
DPW?
the...
Yep.
No,
D.P.U.,
Where-
the
yeah, the-
Department of Public Utilities
The state, okay.
approved the monies to be spent, and we were told in January that this was definitely going to happen. In fact, I've been asking for a year and a half, been in touch with Aquarian for a year and a half, and so have some of our neighbors, and it just keeps getting put back. So that road hasn't been paved in 80 years since those houses were built.
So I can tell you that it is on the list, as Tom said, of projects, and Mary may want to shed a little light on this. It's a little bit delicate because it's part of our negotiations at the moment that are, are ongoing. And so it's difficult to answer you definitively. I can tell you that that project is on the list. We are aware of it, and I don't know if you want to add anything, Mary?
Sure. Thank you for the question and for being here tonight. So, as you said, in January, the plan was to go ahead and for Aquarian to replace the pipes, and then for the road to be paved. And actually,
we have to pave it, but-
certainly, because it's a private way. And on April 22nd, with the vote of town meeting, I'm not sure if people know this, but actually at that point in time, the town became owners of the water system.
Right.
And so what that means is that any work that goes on after April 22nd is the responsibility now of the town as the owner of the water company. And so what we've been engaged with in the last several weeks with Aquarian is just exchanging information to try to get a handle on all the different projects and see where are they in process, can we take a look at the bids, is everything ready to go? And so as a result of that, we just want to kind of do our diligence. We understand that the window for paving roads and replacing water mains is right now, so we hope that over the next few weeks, we will, be able to make some decisions, and actually, this board, in our capacity as water commissioners, will be making those in a public meeting.
Okay.
So on an agenda, these items will be posted, and
At a meeting like this.
at a meeting like this, they will all be done. So we appreciate yours and the public's patience as we just,
Sure.
get, we're just sort of doing our due diligence. It's very cooperative with Aquarian.
Yeah, because I remember, I think it was you that said that's husbandry, good husbandry.
Good husbandry,
To pass
that's right.
the baton to the other
Right,
party.
so the Aquarian, just sort of in a nutshell, because this isn't a posted item, so I want to be careful that we're not getting too deep.
Sure.
The good husbandry period means that the water system needs to be maintained, but also it's customary in good husbandry that if an investment, for example, of replacing water mains is significant enough, that the good practice is that the entity that has to pay for it, in this case, the Hingham Water Company, would be making those decisions. So
The Hingham
that's-
Water Company.
That's, we're.
That has a nice ring
Part
to
of,
it.
part of our process is figuring out what we're going to call it, but anyway, so this is all part of good husbandry, and we are well aware that we are in the midst of the paving schedule. We know you're eager to get your road paved.
Well, it's the water and then the gas company. I've been in touch with them to see about those pipes too, because as long as they're doing the water, it would make no sense to pave. So we kind of need things done before. But I should just tell you, the contractor that they had hired to do this work for Aquarian, they were all set to do it, and then they got called off and said, don't do that job. So they took their machinery away, but left the pipes,
Yes.
which was encouraging that the pipes were still there. But,
And we're all trying to work together, the town, Aquarian, the contractors, to
Yeah.
keep things moving, keep people engaged. And again, we appreciate your patience as we just kind of do our due diligence on this and a few other projects in town.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in tonight. Any other public comments? Okay. We're going to hold off on item 3, which is the charge of the Water Company Transition Evaluation Committee, till next meeting. And we have had a request from Hingham Little League. Do we have a representative here to install a shed at Lynch Field?
Yes.
How are you tonight?
Hi there. My name is Jeff Deedy, 5 Southgate Lane. I'm here representing the Hingham Little League. I'm the Fields and Equipment Commissioner. I'm sort of responsible for the overall condition of the fields, making sure anything that is broken, worn out, needs to be replaced, looked at, whatever is unsafe is repaired properly. We work with the Hingham Rec, with the D.P.U, a whole bunch of different entities to make sure everything gets done and done safely. One of the fields we use very, very highly is Lynch Field, and one of the problems that we have is there's no convenient, sort of secure place to store all of rakes, tools, shovels, dirt, different materials that are used on a daily basis to maintain the fields and keep them safe and to keep them secure. So one of the things that we have at all, I think every other one of the fields, is a storage shed that's convenient, that's centrally located to the fields. Right now, everything is stored in the Lynch Field House, which, as you most likely know, it's a very far walk. Most people either don't put the stuff back or don't get it out in the first place. So we've had a meeting out there with Emily, with Mr. Clancy, about a proper location if we were to get approval for a shed. The Hingham Little League would like to pay for it and then donate it to the town because it's town property, and that's, I think, the protocol to it. And we've had discussions with multiple people in the town to kind of make sure that we dot all the I's and cross all the T's. I am personally a contractor with a construction supervisor's license. I would be pulling the permits for the construction of the shed. I've already started the preliminary process and taken it as far as I can without approval here, and I've provided all of the details of the shed and all that. It's really not a complicated structure. There's no electrical, there's no anything. It's nothing but a storage shed. So
Will it
we're
be
here just
a
requesting permission.
concrete foundation
It
pour?
is on a crushed stone foundation, so
Crushed
Mr.
stone,
Clancy approved of that verbally on site. So, we based everything off of that. It would basically be a compacted 6-inch base of crushed stone.
Okay.
And it needs to be located, the setback is 40 feet off the property line, and we met out there and went over a proper location for it and a convenient location for everybody. So, it's been hand-drawn on the map, and for the building permit, it needs to be put into CAD and put on an actual plot plan, which we will have for the building permit, but this is all the preliminary stuff to get us to that point.
I spoke with Emily, who concurred that this met zoning.
Okay.
Are you proposing any signage?
No signage whatsoever. It's literally just a storage shed. And you have pictures of the shed. The only difference that you'll see in the pictures is that the shed in the pictures has windows. These storage sheds, because it's in a relatively public place, would not have windows. Other than that, it is exactly what you see there. Garage door on one end, regular access, kind of walk-through door on the side, and that's kind of it. It's nothing but, we have a lot of rakes and everything that get left out, and it's certainly once they finish the buildings in the back, the last thing we want are people to start complaining about tools being left out, things like that. So, this seems like a very clean, neat way to kind of handle everything, secure everything for everyone.
How is it secured? Is there a padlock or what's?
There's a lock on the door. All of our sheds have locks and keys in a lockbox that only specific people know the code to, and that's how the rec department, that's how the people from the South Shore Country Club who help us with the maintenance, as well as the board of directors and all the coaches access everything and then lock it up afterwards. So everything stays locked at night. That's the plan. Once in a while something gets left unlocked, but they certainly hear about it the next day. So
Anything else, Joe?
No.
Mary?
No, I'm good.
So I notice it's behind the, looks like behind probably some screening at the top field, but sort of off right field, the right field line for the field that's further set back. You don't have any issue with that location from that right field line?
No, so it's behind a fencing. So there's the high backstop fencing that's there. It's behind the fencing. There's really only a small alleyway where it meets the requirement for the 40-foot setback, yet it's not in the middle of the baseball diamond.
Okay.
So
And
that can be a problem.
what's your timing?
As soon as we have approval, I personally I need to finish the permit process. Once we have the permit in hand, it's a day to prepare the pad, and they can deliver it right away. They have them in stock, so.
And maintenance of the shed?
It would be borne, I would assume, like everything, the things at the field has been pretty much fallen on the shoulders of the leagues that use them.
Yep.
Which, as you may or may not be aware of, we had a major problem with the Lynch Field house this year, where unfortunately the plumber, I wasn't involved with it at the time, the plumber who was responsible for winterizing it did not get it done, and the group that had that ordered up never followed up on it. So when we went to open the shed, we found 12 breaks in the water lines.
Ooh,
and we had to tear apart the building personally, and we paid for it directly out of our own pockets and never asked the town for anything.
Okay.
So we're very responsible. It's the Hingham Little League, as well as the Hingham Youth Football, tend to split most of the expenses there right down the middle.
Okay.
So, and anything, assuming that it's the protocol, anything any maintenance on a shed, which is very little on this particular shed anyways, I would assume it would fall on our shoulders.
Okay.
It's nothing but a storage shed. It's built to be outside. The siding is very durable, and it's the other sheds we have in other locations haven't needed any maintenance, and some of them have been there for upwards of 5 to 8 to 10 years, depending on where they are.
Okay. So the way this is structured tonight, and then I'll open it up for questions if anyone hasn't. The way it's structured tonight, we have a series of 6 votes that will describe kind of your obligations and our relationships with respect to the shed.
Okay.
It's my recommendation that, and I guess I'll make this when we actually vote, that these votes then are incorporated in a revision of the concession agreement, which is between the town and the various leagues that use that field. Because I just worry sometimes we all agree we're all putting our best foot forward, but I'd like to collect, I think, the obligations that are occurring at Lynch Field in kind of one document. So, happy to vote, or happy to, move forward with these votes tonight for consideration, but I think ultimately we'd like to capture all of that in one place.
Okay, that makes sense.
And did you have any other questions? No. Any questions from the public about the shed at Lynch Field? Okay. I would be prepared to take a series of motions. I don't know, should we read them all off? Somebody?
Yeah, but is the procedure you're recommending that these items be included in an agreement that then the various users would sign?
Yeah, so I guess I would say that subject to incorporation in the revision of the concession agreement dated June 15, 2015, between the town of Hingham, Hingham Youth Football, Hingham Little League, and Hingham Youth Hockey. So it's the concession agreement that's described in number 5.
Yep, okay.
Subject to the incorporation in a revised draft of that agreement in 2020. I would move the following votes, I guess. Something along those lines.
Okay.
To incorporate it in 2020.
Yes,
Okay.
in the 2020 revision. I guess my point,
Yeah.
my reason for this kind of tortured process is just, if we're going to revise the main agreement that governs the activities at Lynch Field, I'd rather not then have another agreement floating around out there. Like, we all know what we're doing, we can move forward with this, and then we can, kind of
sense.
button it up. Okay.
So I move that the board approve the installation by Hingham Little League of a shed on Lynch Field in accordance with the specifications and in the locations set forth in the submission received by the Board of Selectmen on May 30, 2019, at the sole cost and expense of Hingham Little League, subject to the following conditions. First, Hingham Little League is responsible for obtaining and is hereby authorized to apply for all necessary permits for the installation of the shed, and such installation shall be done in accordance with all applicable laws, regulations, and permits. Second, upon installation, the shed shall become the property of the town of Hingham. Third, the shed shall be used solely for the storage of equipment used by Hingham Little League for operation of the league. The town shall have the right upon request to Hingham Little League to inspect the contents of the shed. Fourth, all property kept within the shed shall be stored at Hingham Little League's sole risk, and the town of Hingham shall have no responsibility or liability for the contents of the shed or any damage to the shed or its contents. Fifth, notwithstanding any provision to the contrary set forth in the concession agreement dated June 15, 2015, between the town of Hingham and Hingham Youth Football, Hingham Little League, and Hingham Youth Hockey, as to the respective obligations of the parties with respect to maintenance of Lynch Field, Hingham Little League shall be solely responsible for the maintenance and repair of the shed for so long as the concession agreement or any subsequent agreement remains in effect. In the event of damage or casualty to the shed, Hingham Little League shall promptly secure, repair, or if necessary, remove the shed. If the condition of the shed at any time is deemed a public safety hazard by the town in its sole discretion, the town shall have the right, at Hingham Little League's expense, to secure the shed and, if necessary, after not less than 10 days' written notice to Hingham Little League, to remove the shed. 6, at any time after the expiration of the concession agreement or any subsequent agreement governing Hingham Little League's use of Lynch Field, the town notifies Hingham Little League or its successor that it no longer has use of the shed, and Hingham Little League fails to timely remove the contents. Or, if the contents of the shed are deemed abandoned by the town may remove or replace any locks thereon and remove and dispose of the contents of the shed, and shall not be responsible to any party therefore. And I think we're adding an item number 7, which would be that pending revision of the aforementioned concession agreement, the terms of items 1 through 6 that I've just enumerated are deemed incorporated into the concession agreement.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just have one question. Given with all this, is this something customarily, Tom or Michelle, where we would waive the building permit fee?
So that's a vote down here. I was going to ask we do that next. Absolutely
okay.
right, Mary.
It must be on page 2. Okay.
Yeah. While he's here, I was going to suggest we jump ahead and do that vote.
Yep, I got
Okay,
that.
as long as that's
Thank you.
somewhere else.
So,
I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we'll move to page 2.
Page 2, item
There it is. I make a
6 or
motion
so.
to waive the permit fees associated with the construction of a storage shed at Lynch Field.
Is there a second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great.
All right, great.
right,
Thank you
good
so
luck.
much.
I'm assuming that was a really, really long yes, correct?
That was
That was a really long yes.
I'm assuming you're going to build like a giant umbrella over that field. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the Municipal Vulnerability Program Summary and Public Listening Session.
I would suggest, if you want, Madam Chair, maybe we could knock off some of these other ones. We posted this discussion to begin at 7 o'clock. We have 5 more minutes. Maybe we can knock off a few more things
Okay.
if you want some votes or. Maybe we could do the disability item, number 5, the MOU.
Okay.
Emily, want to do this?
Oh, I skipped, didn't I? I skipped anyway. We're supposed to be doing that. I was moving ahead. So your suggestion is I just follow the order?
Tom was being very diplomatic.
Yeah, he was. He's like, well, gee. Sorry about that.
No worries.
All right, instead,
So this item is related to the housing choice designation that Governor Baker awarded the town just last month. With the designation, the town becomes exclusively eligible for certain housing choice capital grants. However, a prerequisite of applying for any of those grants is that we commit to completing an ADA, American with Disabilities Act, self-evaluation and transition plan. So the state requires that we formally make that commitment by entering into a memorandum of understanding, along with the Massachusetts Office of Disability and DHCD, who administers the Housing Choice Program. The commitment is a relatively long-term commitment. We'll have 5 years to complete the plan if you opt to execute the MOU. And the Massachusetts Office on Disability also offers guidance and oversight to help us complete the plan, and they also have grants available that could help us complete the effort.
And is there a specified transition timeline, so 5 years to complete the plan?
To complete the plan, yeah, we have a whole 5 years. If we do not complete it within those 5 years, our housing choice designation would be at risk. I would note it's actually the self-evaluation and transition plan is already a requirement of the Federal Civil Rights Act.
Right.
So,
But the transition timeline then comes,
Bless you.
bless you, comes after the transition plan?
yes, once the plan's in place.
And is there any specified timeline for?
I do not know. I'd have to double check for compliance. It may vary, but depending on what aspect we may or may not be in compliance with.
Well, you weren't here, but Mary reported out on the Housing Choice Award, I think at the last meeting, right? Yeah. And how proud we were of that designation, and the debt of gratitude the town owes to you, Emily, for all of your work to get us there. So,
Team effort. Thank you.
Joe, do you have any questions on this?
Nope.
Mary? What was my other question? So it looked like to me, if we move forward with the transition plan, are we eligible for grants at the conclusion of the planning process, or after the transition period?
Specific to the transition plan, I think we would also be eligible for grants to help us implement the plan.
That's what I was wondering.
Yes.
Okay. And is the self-evaluation and transition plan exercise, it struck me that in the documents, it references like towns with historic districts and the like. So is your sense that you'd put together some sort of staff working group to?
I think that would be
undertake this?
wonderful. I mean, I just learned actually today that Michelle's been appointed the town's ADA coordinator, but there's certainly other departments that would play a role in this, particularly the building department, who already is responsible for Massachusetts Architectural Access Board code requirements. So there's a lot of people who have their hands on it to the extent that it affects facilities and policies. It would be great if we could get a team together.
Okay.
On it.
So it sounds like something that the Board of Selectmen's office would work on in conjunction with you, at the very least, to pull together the expertise needed to fully develop a plan.
Yeah.
In light of the particulars of our community. Mm-hmm. Right, okay. Anybody else? Any other questions with respect to the self-evaluation and transition plan related to compliance with the ADA? And by the way, I would agree with you, right, we're already subject to the law. So, and Massachusetts has a complement to the federal ADA, so. Okay, no more discussion. I would take a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to authorize the chair to execute on behalf of the board a memorandum of understanding with the Massachusetts Office on Disability and the Department of Housing and Community Development in order to ensure Americans with Disabilities Act self-evaluation and transition plan compliance.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Emily. Okay, it's almost 7 o'clock.
Into that now, if you want to.
Move forward? Okay. Okay, next up is number 6, the Municipal Vulnerability Program Summary and Public Listening Session.
So I'm going to be joined by Lonnie Fournier and Mary Kate Shinewitz from Beals and Thomas, if you want to pull up a chair, or who's also been involved in this process. And thank you very much for agreeing to host this meeting. We are here to tell you a little bit about community resilience building planning process that was recently conducted in Hingham with support from Beals and Thomas. This public listening session represents the final step in the process. So our job tonight is to report out what we learned during the earlier stages of the process, and your job really is simply to listen. We're not asking you to vote on anything.
She says politely as possible.
That's not to say that we won't invite public comment. There's a number of methods that we're happy to take input in. We can go very low tech if anybody is dying to provide written comments. There's an opportunity, but the draft report will be available this evening online, along with an email address exclusively for this effort so that people can provide comments electronically. So, to that end, we need clickers.
Should be.
The agenda tonight is to provide a brief overview of the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program and process. We will also summarize the findings report, which highlights hazards, strengths, and vulnerabilities, and recommendations all related to climate change and resiliency. We'll review next steps, and then, as I mentioned a moment ago, there'll be an opportunity for public comment or questions. So, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, or MVP for short, is a product of Executive Order 569 issued by Governor Baker in September 2016. The overarching goals of the order include reducing greenhouse gas emissions and building resiliency to climate change throughout the Commonwealth. So to advance that latter goal in particular, the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, EEA, working with the Nature Conservancy, created a framework called Community Resilience Building to help communities assess climate change vulnerabilities and potential adaptation and mitigation strategies. The state provides resources to assist communities in completing climate change assessments. Those resources include planning and implementation grants, so financial resources, but also technical resources. One example, if folks are interested at home in learning more about climate change in general, is the Resilient Mass Climate Change Clearinghouse, resilientmass.org, which is a repository of up-to-date climate change data, which provides a really cost-effective tool to help local planners and policymakers plan and prepare for climate change impacts. So the state's vision for the MVP program you heard a little bit about, and it seems that communities are very interested in this program. Close to half of all Massachusetts cities and towns are participating at one stage or another as of last November, and that is just 2 years after the program was initiated. It's clear that climate change issues are very important to Massachusetts communities, and that's why so many have opted to participate in the program. The benefits of mitigation planning include that an increased awareness of vulnerabilities, promotion of safety and welfare of communities and citizens, and a cultivation of community commitment to mitigation. This is something that I think Hingham is very aware of and committed and focused on, and has been, not just through this most recent MVP process, but back in 2007, CZM completed a coastal infrastructure inventory and assessment. That document was updated by DCR in 2015. In 2015, the town also engaged Kleinfelder to complete the Climate Change Vulnerability Risk Assessment and Adaptation Study. One outgrowth of that was a report from Weston and Sampson prepared specifically for sewer and D.P.U. on related to the Climate Change Vulnerability Report and what infrastructure improvements they may need to make in order to adapt to climate change. We have the 2016 Hazard Mitigation Plan, the 2016 Draft Open Space and Recreation Plan, and then most recently, the Regional Planning Agency, MAPC, working with Cornell, completed land use and fiscal strategies for climate adaptation study regionally in the towns of Hull, Hingham, and Cohasset, which was an interesting effort to get those communities talking about common challenges and potential shared mitigation in the future. So those planning efforts have resulted to some extent in actual actions to date. I would note the beach restoration project down at the bathing beach was completed in 2016. The Martins Lane seawall repair project is scheduled to take place in the coming months. And then we've all heard over the years about the inner harbor walls, which are now in the planning and permitting stages. And that all helps us build greater resiliency. Turn it over to Lonnie.
Sure. So digging into the MVP process a little bit more, back in June of 2018, we the town, got a grant for $19,500. It was a planning grant, and it was to facilitate the community resilience building process. With that money, we engaged Beals and Thomas as a consultant and assembled a core team consisting of representatives from the town as well as representatives from the consultant. The program or the planning effort officially kicked off last summer, and afterwards, the first milestone was truly the first workshop in December of 18, followed by a second workshop in January of 19. We're here tonight at the public listening session. This is the final step in the process prior to finalizing the draft report, and then once the report is finalized, we're designated as an MVP community and we're eligible for implementation grants. So digging back into the process a little bit more, the core team identified a variety of stakeholders representing officials in local offices, state offices, as well as some private companies as well. And all of these individuals were interested in resiliency efforts. These stakeholders, the list of general groups are on the slide, were invited to the workshops that followed. So starting with the first workshop in December, the goals of that were to define extreme weather and natural hazards related to climate change. And again, this is specifically focused on Hingham. And then identify existing and future vulnerabilities and strengths. Moving on to workshop number 2 the following month, they wanted to develop and prioritize actions for the stakeholders to take in terms of building resiliency and identify opportunities for us to advance those actions. So in workshop 1, there was a little bit of foundation building that needed to happen in terms of getting the stakeholders to understand the CRB process as well as some of the local implications for climate change. There are some key definitions that are used in the MVP process: hazard, risk, vulnerability, and action. And when you read them individually, it seems to make sense, but really what turns the light bulb on is using an example to understand how they differentiate from each other. So Emily and I worked through an example that we hope will help all of you. So the example is there is a heavy precipitation event which results in an increased risk of negative impact on infrastructure, such as a low-lying road. The hazard is the heavy precipitation, the risk is flooding, the vulnerability is the low-lying road. And a potential action would be to raise the elevation of the road to reduce the risk of flooding. At the workshop, they also reviewed the climate change projections, as I indicated. Information from the clearinghouse that Emily mentioned was presented, as well as information from the past planning efforts. Information about potential climate change impacts were presented, including data related to temperature, precipitation, and other factors. Here, this slide shows that temperatures are shown to be increasing. It's projected that the number of days with temperatures over 90 degrees will increase by 6 to 15 days in the 2030s, and another 9 to 49 days of 90-degree weather is anticipated in the 2070s. There's a correlating decrease in the number of days with temperatures below 32 degrees. And if we move over to the right-hand portion of the slide, in terms of precipitation and drought, we're seeing similar increases in the number of days with greater than 1 inch of precipitation, as well as the increase in the number of consecutive dry days. Things are not looking so good for us. In taking the definitions and an overview of climate change impacts, the workshop participants then ranked the highest hazards for Hingham. And the first hazard that came to light was flooding, and a lot of that was based on the recent storm impacts at Hingham Harbor. The image on the left is from the March 2018 flood event that affected Town Pier and Barnes Wharf. And then impacts, there was a recognition throughout the workshop process that impacts are likely to intensify with sea level rise. The image on the right is from the 2015 Kleinfelder report, and it depicts potential flooding along Route 3A at Broad Cove in the year 2070. The second, and I don't think these are in any particular order, it's just the top three ranked items. So the second highest ranked hazard was heat and drought. This was identified primarily due to the potential impacts on vulnerable populations. In Hingham, we have 22% of the population is over the age of 65, and they are potentially more vulnerable to heat. With drought and heat comes an increased risk of wildfires due to dry forest or dry open space conditions, and then a potential negative impact on the availability of water supply. So we recently worked through water restrictions and a lot of focus on, whether or not to irrigate. The photo on this slide is of the Weir River running completely dry, and that is a pretty common event, unfortunately. And then the last highest ranked hazard is severe storms, and this is differentiated from sort of impacts like flooding to be more specific to high winds, ice, and snow. These hazards raise concerns related to access during emergencies, so both getting emergency personnel to areas or people that needed help, as well as getting people at risk out of that situation. Also related are interruptions in utility services, so electrical lines coming down affecting power, water supply, that kind of thing. Severe storms were also noted as a contributor to coastal erosion, so with those nor'easters we get more wind-driven waves against the coast and have some repair work to do afterwards. So in light of the three highest ranked hazards, they then identified strengths and vulnerabilities in town. These are just a few of the examples. They actually did a really good job sort of fleshing out with all the stakeholders that were involved. There were a lot of different viewpoints, and pretty much every topic area was covered. So we just pulled a few examples to give you context tonight. So as a strength, they identified our coastal infrastructure, and that includes the seawalls, the piers, and other buffers that we have to protect our properties from severe storms and coastal flooding. Emergency response and public safety, they felt that there were the fire stations and the harbor master's office were strategically located in the town, and that gives us the ability to respond to emergencies during flooding and severe storms. And then finally, our open space is also a strength. It provides sources of carbon sequestration, reducing the heat island effect, and other green space buffers that can reduce the impact of flooding. Vulnerabilities, on the other hand, we have some aging infrastructure, including sewer and drainage infrastructure. It was broadly identified as a vulnerability for the town. In particular, they talked about sewer pump stations, many of which are currently located in areas vulnerable to both coastal and inland flooding. And stakeholders also expressed concerns regarding our existing drainage infrastructure and whether it would be able to handle increased precipitation. So not only are we getting more precipitation every year, but it's coming in more localized events. The aging population was also of a concern, as I've already said. 22% of Hingham's residents are considered vulnerable due to their age, and several assisted living facilities are located in the floodplain. These populations are also vulnerable to the effects of heat and drought. And then finally, an example of a vulnerability, maintaining the existing quantity and quality of the water surface supply, or the surface water supply. Considerations regarding water quality included discussions of roadway runoff and the locations of hazardous material use and storage. And stakeholders also discussed the need to identify potential new sources and distribution methods of potable water, along with conservation measures for the existing water supply. That's all some overlap with the discussions that we had regarding Aquarian. Turn it back over to you.
Okay, so the workshops identified a number of ways to mitigate some of those impacts. They specifically recommend 3 priority actions. The first is to increase the height of existing seawalls and adjacent upland, continue ongoing maintenance of existing walls, and work with private property owners to improve private seawalls. And you can see a visual of how that might work. This specific image is, again, from the 2015 Kleinfelder report. It's a roadway segment at Broad Cove where the elevation of the road is at 9.3. Sea level rise projections for 2030 would put sea level above the roadway elevation. So they're showing how you may progressively mitigate against that. Up to 2070, it may no longer be practical to hold back the ocean. The sea level at that point is projected to be about 14 feet. The second top priority to improve resiliency, or the second and third rather, relate to utilities. The second was to implement resiliency improvements to sewer pump stations, including installation of watertight mitigation gates, improvement to pump station buildings generally, and sealing of manhole covers to keep floodwaters out. And reduce the likelihood of interruptions in service, and then also to protect the quality and quantity of potable groundwater and surface water supplies. Methods of accomplishing that would be identifying additional sources of water supply, reducing water usage within the town, establishing emergency water distribution sites, educating homeowners on testing of private wells, and educating private well owners and developing a bylaw potentially related to irrigation controls. So those are the highlights from the community resilience building workshops. There is much more text to go along with those highlights. It's available in a draft report. Will be posted live this evening at this website. It's a link to the Conservation Commission's webpage. We invite comments if you're not able to make them tonight because this is all new, to be submitted by email. The email address is mvpcomments@hingham-ma.gov. We're accepting comments for the next 2 weeks and hope to, we'll incorporate any input into the final report, which will then be submitted to EEA so that the town hopefully can be designated in MVP community. And that will enable us to apply for the next round of action grants. Related to these efforts, we hope to continue to plan. There is a section of the open space and recreation plan is still in draft form, so these ideas can be incorporated in there where appropriate, and there will be a section in the master plan update to address these issues. Questions?
I've got to say, Emily, that was an incredible presentation. The work that went into this speaks for itself, and I'm just amazed that you and the others had the time to get this done, given everything else that's on your plate. So thank you very much for that. I just had a question and a comment. The question was, to what extent were you involved with Aquarium with respect to maintaining the quality of potable water and surface water supply?
Was Aquarian involved in the effort? There was a representative from Aquarian that attended one of the 2 workshops.
I believe it was both.
Both.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
And second, I think it was either in today's Boston Globe or yesterday's, there's a state effort looking at local zoning laws to see to what extent they result in making it more difficult for the construction of affordable housing. And one of the items, I believe, that was of concern was local zoning laws that are preserving open space. And now we see a positive reason that we need to preserve the open space. So what sort of communication can we encourage between those who are looking to restrict zoning so that there could be more construction, as opposed to those who recognize the benefits of local zoning in order to preserve open space and other similar types of benefits?
I think the master plan update will provide an opportunity to have that discussion. How does Hingham want to grow? How do we want to look? What are our priorities? Certainly, there's all sorts of issues that the town has to address, and it's balancing act, so maybe greater density in this location, and more open space preservation over here to preserve resiliency in this neighborhood, and those are the types of conversations we'll be having in the coming months, I think.
Great, thank you.
But to your point, in terms of a metric, to be able to preserve local zoning with respect to 40B applications, for instance, we don't get any points for open space acquisition, right? It's a,
Not that I'm aware of.
we don't.
Yeah, they're usually, but although interestingly, this part of that executive order 569 required each of the executive offices for the state administration to designate a climate, Mary Kate, do you know the term? It's like a climate coordinator. So DHCD and every single state agency is now also supposed to be considering climate change, preparing a plan, and updating policies where appropriate. So I do think they're trying. It's complex, as we know, and we'll continue the conversation. I think this program has been a really valuable partnership between the state and municipalities to advance common interests, and hopefully we'll get there in housing too.
well, to Joe's point, it might be interesting to find out how the DHCD plan will roll out to the extent that they would have any commentary with respect to, 40B regulations.
Yeah, we should. We can request it.
Okay. Mary?
Thank you. This is really terrific, and I think we'll all take the time to read the draft report and forward things. Just one kind of a question with these MVP grants, which are, if our top priority is down at the harbor. I also know that the Harbor Development Committee is eyeing the Seaport Bond Council for grants potentially, and I guess my question is, how does the MVP, will the MVP grant, is that separate from Seaport Bond? Is it, are we eligible for both, or would we need to sort of make a choice to pursue one? It's different pots of money.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm Mary Kate Schneeweiss with Fields and Thomas. So the MVP program has its own grant portion of it. So for those communities that have become designated as MVP communities, they have action grants to implement those items that are mentioned in the report as further resiliency improvements. Mm-hmm. Separate from that, being an MVP designated community provides increased standing in other grant programs.
Okay.
So the Seaport Economic Council's grant is a separate grant program, but having this designation may provide better odds towards getting these grants in the future. And I believe the action grants usually have a match requirement that I think it's been 25% in the past. So leveraging one grant to match for the other is possible.
Terrific, because I noticed, I think it was within the last couple of days, I think Speaker DeLeo has introduced pretty ambitious, sort of climate resiliency type funding, and I don't remember how much, it was a lot of money. And so I think it'll be really important as we move along in this that we coordinate those different efforts so that we put Hingham in the best standing to receive the maximum amount of state dollars. And I think the other thing, and Emily and Lonnie, I could, we could catch up offline. I think one thing that, with respect to water supply that's a little bit different from when this started is that many of the efforts that you talked about relate to additional source of supply or managing the supply we have. With Hingham purchasing the water system, we now have the ability to have more direct control over water main replacement projects, which means that we're going to be able to be more efficient with what's withdrawn from the aquifer. We've heard that expression of unaccounted for water, which is water that's withdrawn and then not available for consumption. So as the town is looking to accelerate the investment in water main replacements, I think that's going to have some benefit too. So again, as you're finalizing this report, I'm happy to have a little bit of conversation because I think that's a pretty significant step the town's taken that will differentiate us from a lot of other communities. So it may be worth incorporating that new news into the report.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, just a phenomenal effort. I think the number of moving parts, the number of stakeholders that you incorporated, the seminars or workshops that you conducted have really produced a very comprehensive view of how climate change has the potential to impact the community. And it sounds like, Emily, again, I probably have a similar question that I raised in respect to the ADA grants or program, and that would be, so we're an MVP community, and I guess to Mary's point, we may want to prioritize then the projects on the town side that we would look to have some help from our state partners in funding. And so I think we'd need some kind of coordinating effort, probably, again, the Board of Selectmen's office and your offices to sort of decide the direction we will head in. For sure, we've identified the wharfs along the harbor as a priority for the town, but there may be other projects that we want to get in that pipeline, and I just want to be sure that we're planning and we're coordinated. And I was glad to hear that it sounds like this piece will now fit into the master planning piece, and so the timing for that between the affordable housing study, this study, and then undertaking the master planning effort, I just think couldn't be better timing. Almost like we planned it. Wonderful presentation and really very comprehensive effort on behalf of the town, so thank you. Any questions from the public? Mr. Watson.
I shouldn't be the first one.
Sure. Well, you don't want to be the last one either.
Might be the same.
Jim Watson, 291 Rockland Street. As a planner, having done some mitigation planning, I'm astonished by the breadth and scope of what you're doing. It's amazingly credible. As a member of the Housing Authority, I have a very specific question. You mentioned in passing, I think, Emily, the Housing Choice Program, so-called Section 8, where we subsidize the rents in private market housing in various places, mostly in other towns because the prices here are so high. And we're at least attentive to having the units inspected before we allow the subsidy. And if they're in a high-risk area, really high-risk area, we'd be pretty guarded. But you mentioned that just in passing. I didn't get it. Is there a direct connection?
That's an excellent question, if you don't mind the answer. The Housing Choice Designation Program that I mentioned is separate and distinct from Housing Choice Vouchers. It's not related to Section 8. But to your point that there are vulnerable populations in town, the report recognizes that, and they seek to mitigate the risk that those populations may be affected by climate change. So it's certainly an appropriate comment. But there is a distinction between the Housing Choice Designation that recognizes the town's high production in the number of housing units it's produced over the last 5 years.
Yeah, because there are conflicts between getting an affordable unit and getting a safe unit, and one that's going to remain safe. And the same with any future development. If it's in what are now somewhat low-lying areas, we want to really look at the Kleinfelder and see, does this even make sense? So, good. Well, nice going.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other questions from the audience? All right. So you'll check us off that we listened?
Yes, thank you for listening. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for all the
I
work.
just add one closing comment to anyone who's been listening. MVP is not associated with the Red Sox. It does not mean most valuable player. It means Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness.
Good point. Thank you very much. Very good. Thanks for being here. Is Kerry going to come up?
He is.
To the next? Okay.
I'm trying to get his eye.
All right, we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is the discussion and potential approval of a proposed resolution of D.P.U. Case 19-29. And our litigation counsel for the town, Carrie Ryan, is joining us.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Would you like me to explain kind of in general what this relates to?
I would love that.
Okay. In general, this proposed settlement is of kind of a administrative proceeding that the D.P.U. has. In D.P.U., they're known by their number 1790, which the order came out in October 31 of 2018. The D.P.U. approved a 2% rate increase that was a surcharge for basically additional capital expenditures that Aquarian had wanted to do, which was basically main replacements. So that was approved in October of 2018. D.P.U. then set up an administrative proceeding to review the actual implementation of that rate increase to make sure that it was anticipated that that rate increase would occur over the course of each of many next years. It was basically going to be a yearly thing. And so part of the reason the town got involved was to make sure that if the town didn't purchase the water company, the town would have a seat at the table for each of those years going forward. So now that the town has voted to purchase the water company, there isn't quite the need for setting up these long-term procedures with the D.P.U. because once the closing occurs, the D.P.U.'s jurisdiction of the town would end. And so what we've done is Aquarian has filed its required documents to the D.P.U. The town has reviewed them, as has the town of Hull, the Attorney General's office, and so those are pending. And what we've now talked about with Aquarian is settling this particular aspect because the cost of this it's really not really worth the benefits too much. The benefits are real. The cost to a typical ratepayer is on the first bill, it looks like in September of 2019, it'll be $3.53. And then over the course of a year, it looks like it'll be just over $10 per year. And so we hate to see the town spending, quite a bit of money litigating or dealing with hearings over this at this point. And so all the parties talked and they decided it makes sense to resolve this. The town of Hull was in favor. They haven't voted yet, but in theory at least they're in favor of this. And also we've talked with the Attorney General's office, and they've indicated that they would not have opposition to this. They would have no opposition. So.
And Cohasset, I'm assuming, is...
So Cohasset and I was going to ask you to condition this to the approval by of Cohasset. Chris and I have been playing phone tag, so I'm not anticipating any problems from them, but I've not been able to connect with them.
And if we vote on that condition tonight, assuming that the town manager in Cohasset approves it, we should be able to move forward. And if there's any issue, I suppose the question would be one of timing. Is this sensitive to our meeting schedule?
The D.P.U. has requested an update, or I'm sorry, the D.P.U. has requested an update by June 7th, but they've set right now a deadline of June 14th to approve it by.
Okay.
And so, I don't know if you have a meeting before June 14th?
No, I would just also add that this would also be helpful because the D.P.U. has put forth a schedule, and that schedule is set, and to the extent that votes are delayed, that schedule will start to take effect, and we might all be engaged in work that isn't necessary, and that, so.
Correct, and actually this settlement only involves Service Area A. Service Area B, which involves Oxford and Millbury, still has to go through this proceeding, so the D.P.U. does need to keep moving.
Got it. Well, I guess I can't imagine that Cohasset's going to have an issue. That would be the only question is if...
He's intimated that he doesn't have any issues, but I just haven't expressly talked to him.
And I don't believe, Carrie, this is for MRAM projects from 17 and 18, and I'm not even sure there were any projects in Cohasset that are eligible for this program, so.
It's not going to be an issue.
Correct, Mary. These only do relate to projects from 2017 and 2018. The surcharge that begins in September would only relate to those projects, and those are already in service.
And did the Attorney General's office have any concerns with our settling this aspect of the?
No, they indicated that they wouldn't have any objection to this as long as the towns are okay with it. They're fine with it.
Have they approved the language that we're going to vote on?
The AG has reviewed the language, and they did make some suggestions, and those suggestions were all adopted. And so the AG, or the Attorney General's office, still has to review this final, but I believe they'll be okay. And the way we've set up the vote is that
Substantially in the form.
substantially,
Yep.
if there's minor typos and things, or minor things, that you would give me the authority to do that. To the extent there's a substantive thing, I'll come back to you.
Is there anything in this agreement that would result in an increase in the purchase price that the town would be paying for the water assets?
No, this shouldn't impact the purchase price in the water company. In fact, you'll notice in paragraphs, well, in the whereases clause, every legal document has to have whereas clauses. And then also, you'll notice in paragraphs 2.1 and 2.2, it specifically excludes this from being used against the town in other proceedings.
Any other questions, Joe?
Nope.
Mary? Good. Any questions in the audience on this? Okay, take a motion.
I move that we authorize counsel for the town to sign and file a settlement of the proceeding identified as D.P.U. 1929 in substantially the form presented this evening, subject to the condition that this agreement be approved by the town of Cohasset.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
All right, now we just have a bunch of votes.
Okay. So do you,
Oh, and appointments.
and Emily's not here, I don't know whether you may want to, you'd be willing to take the lead on the
Sure.
appointment to the ZBA?
I would if I could find the right sheet for that.
You can have mine.
I'll take yours, thank you. So I am the recently retired chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, which resulted in the zoning board having only one permanent member, and the Board of Selectmen has the authority to appoint the Zoning Board of Appeals members. We are going to be interviewing candidates, but I think it's important that we move forward and get a well-qualified candidate on the board as soon as possible, knowing that there are 2 slots, and we will continue to interview for the second slot. I have substantial experience in what's involved in serving on the board, and I would strongly recommend that we move forward with an appointment of Paul Healy to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Thank you for that. Well,
So that was not a motion,
Yeah.
that was just,
any further discussion on this, Mary?
No, I'm defer to Joe. Knows what's involved in this better than anybody.
And any questions from the audience on the appointment of Paul Healy to the Zoning Board of Appeals?
not, I make a motion that we appoint Paul Healy to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 3-year term ending June 30, 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Welcome back, Paul.
That was a short vacation, Paul.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think it was all the bullying to fill out a talent bank application.
That's right.
Tom, do you want to take us through the Capeway Roofing contract?
So Michelle was pretty closer with that, but in general, this is a roof, a rubber roof that we're putting on the school department here at Town Hall.
Okay.
So we had asked for some funding in the FY19 capital budget to replace that part of the roof. And we had bid it out in the fall, and the bids back came at $30,000 over our budget. So we went back to capital as part of the FY20 year budget process, asked for some additional funds, and combined it with a smaller roof that's over the police department. So this project will be for the school department roof, the smaller police department roof, and a walkway in between. All of these have been leaking for quite a while, and as the buckets kept appearing in the school department, and our building maintenance supervisor kept paying for repairs and patching to be done over the last 2 years, we went back and were able to get some extra funding. The FY20 funding was accelerated so that it's available in FY19. We have a total budget of about $140,000 for this project. Capeway Roofing is the bidder that we are going with, and they came in at $111,300, I believe. We've also hired BEA Building Envelope Analysis. They are a consultant that wrote the roofing specs, is managing the bidding process, and will also oversee the work for us. So we're hoping to be able to move forward with this contract, and we've tentatively scheduled the work to begin July 15th. They believe it'll take 2 to 3 weeks, and then we'll be able to, the roof should last at least 20 years after that.
The kicker was when I heard Dr. Gallo was up on a chair in her office with a bucket full of water. So
Yeah.
that was the indicator that perhaps it's time.
Maybe it's time, yeah. Has Susan reviewed the contract? Has anybody-
John Coughlin
John
has.
Coughlin reviewed the contract, okay. It always scares me when it's, I don't know about you, Joe, it scares me when it's this like typed out form contract. I'm like,
Yes, the AIA documents can be intimidating.
Yeah.
What is the warranty associated with the roof? Do we know?
Let me check in here. I know their warranty information is provided. Let's see. I may have to get back to you on that so I can locate it in these documents.
And there may be a couple, right? There may be manufacturer's warranty that come with the products, and as well as the installation warranty, or hopefully there's that.
And my reading of this document is, it appears that the consultant building envelope analysis is essentially acting as an architect would in these type of arrangements, where they will actually certify that the work was done in accordance with the specifications.
Correct.
Great.
They'll sort of be our in-between,
Right.
because we don't have the expertise to manage the project to that degree.
But the all-in cost includes the role of BEA.
BEA is on top of the $111,300, but it's separate funding that separate money that we had already included in our FY19 and FY20 capital requests. So it comes out of the full $140,000 that we had.
Okay.
It's about $10,000 total, and we've spent about half of that with them writing the specs.
And do we have a separate contract with BEA?
Yes, we do. That was signed by Tom earlier this year because it was under the $50,000 threshold.
Okay, that was my question. Okay. Mary? I'm good. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. I take a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the contract with Capeway Roofing to complete a partial roof replacement at Town Hall.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I will send you the warranty information afterwards.
So Dr. Gallo can get down off her chair.
Yes. I think she's down off her chair now anyway.
Okay, moving on to the comprehensive master plan agreement with Barrett Planning Group LLC. Is that you or Michelle?
So this is, again, probably a little bit more, Michelle, I can tee it up. So this is, if you remember at town meeting, we formed a committee, I believe of 17, maybe 19 members. That was a fun conversation, but that committee will be working with the team that is going to be drafting the master plan that's under this contract. So this is a contract to engage a private company to come in and initiate and kick off and manage that program.
But am I correct that the program is actually the responsibility of the planning board?
You are correct. And the planning board issued an RFP, well, the planning department issued an RFP last year, and we had gone through the whole procurement process that resulted in this bid.
But because you're the procurement officer, we're
That's right.
signing that
Exactly.
contract. And I know you've reviewed it. Do you have any other comments? Or?
No, I've reviewed the agreement. I think there are the appropriate precautions, and before invoices are submitted to us for payment, they need to receive the review and approval of the planning board.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's an important step here.
Yep. Okay. Mary, any comments?
I'm good.
Any comments from the public? I think this is going to be a really exciting effort, and as we said earlier in the context of the earlier discussions, I just think it's coming at a wonderful time. Gordon Carr is going to chair the group, and I think it's an exciting beginning of an exciting process for the town. I will take a motion.
I move that we authorize the town administrator to sign the comprehensive master plan agreement with Barrett Planning Group, LLC.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Okay, moving on.
So this next one allows us to be reimbursed by National Grid for work done on the Main Street gas main installation project.
What is the status of the work? Are we starting phase 2 now? Is phase 1 finished up?
I can tell you it's not complete. I think we all know that. Where they are at the end of phase 1, I can't tell you exactly.
Okay.
I can find out.
Okay. I would just ask, and it's a little bit off subject, but related to this, that as phase 2 is getting geared up, that we pay particular attention to the location of staging areas.
Yes.
If we have to have multiple staging areas, so that we can, that will be an inconvenience to some residents, but let's, spread the pain around, and not necessarily overburden kind of any one group. I also met with some residents on Cushing Street, and I think I forwarded some suggestions that they had as far as what they learned last summer to make that process go well. So for example, during the day, they asked National Grid to deliver the supplies during the day to where the work was being done, so that you didn't have the trucks coming and going. So if National Grid would be so kind as to incorporate some of those practices that they learned last year, I think it will minimize the disruption that is inevitable with a project like this.
I can say the National Grid rep has been wonderful to work with. He's been very responsive. He understands these issues. He's done this in a lot of communities. He's been very creative in trying to find ways to minimize the impact on the residents.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe to Mary's question, maybe at the next meeting, you could just let us know where things stand. Okay.
Can do.
And including their plan for repair, right? They're supposed to restore the streetscape.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
Any questions from the audience on this one? Seeing none,
I'll make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the memorandum of agreement with National Grid for the gas main installation project on Main Street.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Kind of bittersweet. The next, our next action is to discharge the Water Company Acquisition Study Committee. This is a committee formed by the Board of Selectmen, so the Board of Selectmen can discharge it. You know that at town meeting, we usually have committee reports and discharge of committees at that point. The reason why we're taking this action is this was actually a committee of the Board of Selectmen. Any comments on this? It was a just wonderful group of citizens to work with, and a wonderful effort on behalf of the town.
I didn't think the ball and chain was going to be released.
I think they've like pulled it as taut as it's going to get. So yeah, while I hate to let them go, I think it's probably 7 years is probably about enough.
And they really do deserve a world of thanks from the town.
I think there's some bottles of champagne about to be uncorked.
Take a motion.
I move to discharge with thanks the Water Company Acquisition Study Committee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. The Clerestory Windows. That was like a new, I feel like if I were in a spelling bee, I would be all over that. Or I might go on Jeopardy now that guy's been upset. I might, what
That's
is?
right.
the-
Yeah, that's right. He's gone. That's right.
So this is
Could have beat him anyway, Madam Chair.
So this is just another permit waiver. Mary, I think, explained the last time. We did it once tonight. If there are town projects, we typically waive permit fees. So this is for the project at the high school dealing with the windows in the gym.
That's right.
Yes.
Make a motion to waive the permit fees associated with the installation of the high school Clerestory windows.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
You wanna do the
Motion
next
to
one?
waive the building permit and electrical permit fees for high school repairs resulting from the recent fire.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I think we are now at the one-day liquor licenses? Okay. I reviewed the files. Chief, everything seems to be in order with these?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any particular questions on any of these, or we can just move through the motions?
Yes, I'm fine with it.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Mark Mignosa on behalf of Fruit Center Marketplace for the Spring Craft Beer Fest to be held at the Fruit Center Marketplace parking lot on Saturday, June 15, 2019, from 1 to 4 p.m.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Kelsey Strout on behalf of the McCourt Family Foundation for the Tour to South Shore Bike Walk event to be held at Wampatuck State Park on Saturday, Friday, on what? All right, even I can't do that one. What's the 21st? I'm guessing it's Friday. It's Friday?
I think it's Friday.
Can we pull that up?
I'm looking.
And so you are entertaining me.
21st is Friday.
Friday? Okay. Event to be held at Wampatuck State Park on Friday, June 21st, 2019, from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m.
So, Madam Chair, just so I'm understanding, you said you would entertain the motion, so I would then make the motion. It would require a
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I would entertain a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Joan Meschino for a reception and fundraiser to be held at Ames Chapel on Monday, June 17, 2019, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I would entertain a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Scott McIsaac on behalf of the Episcopal Parish of St. John the Evangelist for Summerfest 2019 to be held at the St. John the Evangelist Church grounds on Sunday, June 23rd, 2019, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I would entertain a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Abigail Coughlin on behalf of Compass for an employee reception to be held at the launch at Hingham Shipyard on Wednesday, June 5, 2019, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We got it down toward the end. Okay, town administrator reports.
I am proud to announce that tomorrow I will be graduating from Citizens Police Academy after 10 Wednesdays and a couple other extra events such as a trip to the Braintree gun range and a ride along with Officer Sullivan. It was an excellent, excellent program. I know they always have a wait list every year, but I encourage everyone to try to participate in the program if they can. Sergeant Smith and Officer Sullivan, Officer McGillicuddy, and many of the other officers ran it, and it was just a good opportunity to get to know them, to understand a little bit more of what they're facing on a daily basis. I think the ride-along may have been a highlight of the class for me, and also nice to get to know some of the other residents and folks in town who were participating. But I thank the chief and his staff for putting that on every year.
Well, we appreciate you taking extra time in addition to your long workday to engage in that. And I know you're not the only one. Your colleagues around town do take advantage of the Citizens Police Academy program as well. So well done.
Thank you.
Top of the class, or where do you think you fall?
They're all top.
Oh, there we go. Anything else, Michelle?
That's it. Thank you.
Tom?
So I just wanted to let everyone know I had the pleasure of participating in a ceremony this afternoon at 4 o'clock downstairs to highlight a new display that speaks to the history of the Hingham Shipyard and its role in World War II. So anyways, it's a very impressive display. It's right on the second floor, opposite or between the zoning and building side with the planning side. And I encourage everyone to come in and take a look. There's a lot of neat stuff in there. And the other thing I would state is I just want to reiterate a statement I've made publicly regarding our engineering department. So we are in the midst of a investigation, and the town will be reserving comment until after that investigation is complete.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Joe?
Nothing?
Mary?
Couple things. Tomorrow from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Hingham Middle School, there is a public reception to thank Dr. Gallo for her years of service. It's taking place in the Hingham Middle School cafeteria. All members of the public, staff are welcome to join the school committee, and we thank them for arranging that. I just wanted two other things kind of related to schools. One is to thank everybody involved in the community, from members of the school department, to high school administration, to the fire department, to the police department, to the building commissioner for the responsiveness and professionalism in dealing with the minor fire that took place at Hingham High School. Fortunately, the building was not occupied when the fire broke out. It was contained quickly. It took a real team effort to get that school back open again on Monday, and also to make sure that it was safe. So really do appreciate what ended up being a really big effort. And then lastly, I just want to give a shout out in particular to the Hingham High School administration, in particular Principal Rick Swanson. This past week, the class of 19 graduated. Principal Swanson and his team had a number of wonderful ceremonies. It was meaningful for all of the students, all of the family. It was Hingham at its best, and it was just a wonderful day of celebration for the entire community. And speaking as the parent of a graduate, I would just thank Principal Swanson and his team for a really wonderful week.
That's fantastic, and I echo Mary's congratulations to the class of 2019, and congratulations to particularly all the parents for getting through that as well. Any other comments? Okay, I will now let everyone know that we intend to enter into executive session. So I recommend the board enter in executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and/or to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel for the water superintendent position pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2. The board will not resume an open session this evening. Roll call vote. Joe?
I vote in favor.
Mary?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.